Me okay? Wonderful. All right, so my name is Vic Shandor. I'm the superintendent for the York County School Division. And first off, let me say thank you for being here today. We appreciate that. We're going to let some of the folks continue to find their seats as we jump in. But I'm going to go through just a couple small items of logistics. So first, we are FaceTime living this. So if you felt like you had to hold your phone for the whole time, you can put your phone down and you don't have to video. We're going to do that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is this presentation, as we go through it, I know folks will be wanting to snap pictures and those types of things. We're going to post this following our session at TAB today. So you'll have the entire presentation posted. And then we're also going to post a frequently asked questions later on today. So a lot of the information you're going to hear today that we're answering in this session as well as at TAB High School, we're going to post that information today. All right? All right, so let's jump in. So by now you know we've had a situation, and I guess I can speak for everyone in the room. There's a number of places we'd rather be than here talking about this. The situation when it happened on Monday, when it first started, when the fire first started, we're going to get into the details of that a little bit later in the presentation. But I do want to share just a personal story before we get started. So as we were finding the information out through 3:40, 4 o'clock, 4:30, 5 o'clock, my parents still live up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And my 76-year-old mother picked up the phone and called my cell phone. And just like everyone else in the room, if your mom calls, you answer. Or you do something, you either text back or whatever you do. But I answered, and my mom asked, first question was, the kid's okay, because I have 3 kids in our school system. And I said, yes. And she said, did anyone get hurt? And I said, no. And she reminded me, she said, count your blessings. So I just want us to... I just want us to remember for us to count our blessings today, and for me there's really 2 of them. One, no one was hurt. It happened after hours with a minimum number of staff in the complex and students in the complex. If this had happened 2 or 3 hours earlier, we had 2,300 students and staff members in that building that we would have had to evacuate. So the second blessing is that our community is strong and our community is supportive, including our surrounding neighbors. And I want to thank the people who've reached out to us, and I'm going to list them for you so you can hear the numbers of people and groups that reached out to us. First, obviously, the York County Fire and Life Safety. The York Pocosin Sheriff's Office. County administration and staff. We have a number of people from the county who've helped us with this. Mr. Morgan has checked on me, probably more than my own parents have at this point. The school board, the board of supervisors, they've been wonderful through this, and many of them are here. Some of them are out greeting. I know our school board chair, Ms. Richardson's here. They've been incredibly supportive. And let me move to the community. We have had numerous churches reach out to support and offer anything they need. We had our staff meeting with the Grafton Complex staff members yesterday, right down the road. We've had numerous businesses and organizations reach out to us, and our military partners reached out to us. Finally, the Virginia Department of Education, we've been in constant contact with them. I was on the phone with James Lane Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night. So we've had a lot of conversation, as has our staff. Our neighboring school divisions, Pocosin, Newport News, Williamsburg, James City, Hampton, Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, and a number of our school divisions have reached out to offer any support that they can give us. Multiple parents, and many of you are in this room, multiple parents have reached out, multiple staff and students have reached out to me personally. And let me just say this to anyone in this room or anyone in our community who's watching this, that I have not personally responded to. I'm sorry I haven't done that yet, but I'm working on that, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Finally, I want to thank our team members. We have a number of team members here. We've worn blue shirts today so you can recognize who staff members are, and as well as our principals and assistant principals. Excuse me. This brings me to who's been at the table for the last 5 days and nights working on this situation. So I pulled together our instructional team, our principals, operations and maintenance leaders, transportation, technology, human resources, school administration, finance, communications. So as you can see, a number of people have been around the table as we solve this complex issue. On this team, in the school administration teams, we have multiple parents in this group whose children are at all 4 schools that are impacted by our decisions, including myself. While we were working through the big picture, school teams from Grafton Complex, York High, and Tab Middle were working separately, collaborating to make plans so that our transitions are as workable as possible. So here's the bottom line. Every child matters. Not just the 2,000 plus at the Grafton Complex and the additional 2,000 plus from York High School and Tab Middle School. Every child that we're charged with educating. This team cares. This team cares about students, staff, and families, and that's why we're in this business. That's why all of us chose to get in this business. I understand this is an emotional time. Our job is to make the tough decisions. And we need to be compassionate and empathetic. But we cannot make decisions based on emotions. We have to be analytical and trust that our processes work. With that said, I'm going to jump into our agenda and our process for today. So I'm not sure who. Thank you, David. So we're going to work through our agenda today. So we're going to have a number of staff members present to you information. We're going to get to questions and answers as well. We're going to provide a status report. We're going to talk about state mandates. We have a decision report. We're going to talk through logistics, and we're going to do questions and answers. We really appreciate the Facebook comments. I don't get on there and read a lot of that stuff, to be honest with you, but a lot of our staff members monitor Facebook. There's a lot of great questions on there. So we've taken a lot of those questions as well as the questions you've taken in, and we have staff members in the back putting them into groups. So at this point, I'm going to ask Ms. Catherine Goff. She's going to explain the question and answer portion, and I'll introduce our first speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sanders. So for our question and answer portion, what we have spent the last probably 12 hours doing is reviewing the questions that have already been received online through our email process. And now we have these wonderful stickers you guys have been filling out for us. We thank you for sharing that. We are doing this in the interest of being efficient with your questions today. We do have to end at 3 p.m. as the superintendent said, so that we can get to tab and do this again for folks who are not able to be here now. So when we finish our report, those questions we have not yet had a chance to answer during our presentation, our staff are going to be prioritizing those so that we can answer them. Basically the most frequently asked questions, the biggest questions that we're hearing consistently from our parents. Our staff are going to bring those forward based both on the online questions we received and the questions on the notes. They will ask them so that we can answer them, and then we will turn the microphone over so that if we have not addressed the question yet, we will give you that chance to answer a question we have not yet had an opportunity to address. If you have a question that comes up during the session that you don't think we've answered yet, you can raise your hand and we will bring you another sticky note, or if you have a sticky note you'd like us to collect, just hold it up and staff will come around and collect that from you at that time. Okay? Thank you all.
All right, so we did want to put some norms up here for the group, for all of us in here. Make sure that we actively listen. Please assume goodwill. We want to make sure that we're respectful to each other, and then that we honor our Q&A process. David, if you could hit the next slide. All right, I'm going to bring up Dr. Jim Carroll. He is our Chief Operations Officer who has worked, again, day and night throughout the last 5 days and nights to wrap his arms around this problem. So he's going to go through a lot of information. I'll turn it over to Dr. Carroll.
Thank you, Dr. Shandor. And I want to lead off with echoing everything that Dr. Shandor said, especially the expressions of appreciation for the support from all arenas. And you know, as we work forward on this, we're working on a solution of a problem that none of us wanted, and it's going to affect thousands of families. And we're here to talk about how we arrived at that decision. And there is no perfect solution for for all 4,000 families that are affected here. So we'll start with the work that I was primarily involved with was 2 tracks of work. And the first one is the building itself, Grafton, and where we're at. And so as soon as the event happened late Friday, we're working to deal with the situation with Fire and Life Safety and the Sheriff's Office and Dominion and others. And a lot of vendors were even on site that night. We're having a lot of individual conversations. And then by Thursday morning, we were able to pull everybody that was involved to the table. We had engineers, electrical contractors, general contractors, insurance representatives, the building inspector, the Fire and Life Safety, all the way to the manufacturer of the component where the main failure was in the room to have a conversation about what was our understanding of the problem at the time and what was a realistic timeline for repair. Because we were going to deal with, can we look at a temporary solution or a permanent solution, and which was the better. And it was at that meeting that we realized we were dealing with more than just a few weeks. I mean, we knew we had more than days to this because of the damage, but we thought possibly weeks, and we were getting conflicting information as the individual conversations went along. So it's a Thursday morning at around 10 o'clock, we now know we're dealing with a solution that's going to take months to happen. And we worked on whether a temporary solution could get us back in the building quicker or a permanent. And in the end, the temporary was conflicted by the fact that an insurance investigation is still ongoing, fault still has to be determined, and that would slow the temporary solution to the point where it was just within a couple of weeks of an anticipated permanent solution. So that's why we're going with the timeline that we're going with. So that's the work that was done there. And then additionally, that we have to deal with the smoke contamination that's in the building. That was not as much a complicating factor in the timeline because we can, they can ramp up the speed with more bodies or they can slow it down. So restoration with the smoke contamination is not a timeline consideration, but there are other considerations that we'll talk about later, dealing with your questions, I'm sure. So that deals with the time necessity in getting back to the Grafton complex. So the other issue was how do we resume learning for the Grafton students? And that falls under, it was a concurrent process, and that work started as early as Tuesday. And what is the best solution to deal with 2,000 displaced students? And so we moved on to the following process. Or are you going? Okay, I'm sorry. I'll be back later with that. And she's going to talk about mandates that are involved.
Good afternoon. I'm the Chief Academic. Can you hear me? Good afternoon. I'm the Chief Academic Officer for the York County School Division, and I echo everything that Dr. Shandor and Dr. Carroll have shared with you here today. I also want to give a lot of thanks to our Virginia Department of Education. One of the things that Dr. Shandor did when this first started to happen in our school division is he reached out to Dr. Lane, and Dr. Lane is our state superintendent, and he and his team have been working with us over the last 4 days to look at options and plans, and they've been very supportive in that process, and they're going to continue to be so throughout this experience. What I'd like to do, if you could advance the slide, please. I wanted to just share a couple of the state mandates or requirements because I think it's helpful to have this. When Dr. Carroll comes back in a few minutes, he's going to talk about the options we considered, but all options had to work underneath some requirements. So in our Virginia code, the first bullet is the standard school year. Our students in Virginia are required by state code to attend we have to have 180 teaching days or 990 instructional hours. That is a mandate. There is really no flexibility in that. The next bullet is standard unit of credit, And some people if you've been a high school parent or a middle school parent taking a high school course, we also have a requirement of 140 clock hours for each high school credit-bearing course. So that's not total, that's for each course. But what the state does allow is some flexibility in that, and we actually have that in our policy. We can meet that requirement through a number of different ways that we do in our school division. When we looked at, if you could go back one slide for just a minute. When we looked at these two, we had to look to see where each of these schools would meet the requirements. And so that led a lot of our decision making. And we will talk in a few minutes, but where it came down to for us is for our two schools, for York High School and for Tad Middle School, we're looking to meet the state requirement through our instructional hours requirement. And for Grafton, we're looking to meet that requirement through our school days. And I can tell you, if you advance to the next slide, the state provides us some options when there is an emergency. And so one of those options that we talk to the state about is this one right here. And it talks about for if a school is closed for 6 days or more, we are required to make up the first 5. And after that, we are required to make up for every 2 days and miss 1 day of instruction. So that is one of the considerations we're giving in our plan. You could advance to the next slide. Some people also asked about the waiver. We've had questions about a school waiver. One of the reasons that the state provides us is so schools can have an opportunity to go outside of those 2 requirements. The waiver does require that we exhaust all options first. And that includes Saturdays, that includes spring break, that includes extending the summer. That the state in their language says that we have to show before we are given a waiver for those 2 requirements of 180 days or 990 instructional hours, we have to show that we've met and we've all possible options to meet those requirements. And so we're working with the state to try to be very creative in our process. And as Dr. Carroll comes back up in just a moment, we're going to go through the options that we considered, but we really wanted you to have this information so you can see where the parameters were for us as a school division as we looked at all the options. So I'm going to ask Dr. Carroll to come back up.
Okay, so back to the decision-making process. For years now in York County Schools, we use some decision-making protocols that were developed by Trigo Ed. And if you'll advance the slide, please. And this is a process that we use for all of our big decisions. We use them for a lot of our medium decisions. And after you've used them for some years, it tends to kind of get into your small decision-making, like when you go to buy a car, you know, because it gives you a systematic way to do it. Most important thing is it lists, and there's lots of different tools, but they list the questions you should be thinking about when you're working with certain types of decisions. So in this type of situation, we were using a decision analysis where you weigh the merits of different types of options, because we're not just doing a pro and con list and making a decision. I just want you to know there's a more well thought out system in that. But to summarize, you basically start with your criteria. And we sat down and we talked about what are the criteria that you have to make the best decision you can. Because there is no perfect decision here. Make the best decision you can for the most amount of people, protecting the most amount of our instructional program. So we came out with 15, and 4 of them were just non-negotiables that would knock some of our ideas out of the water to begin with. And then you compare, and we came up with 9 strategies or solutions to evaluate against each other against that criteria. And then after that, you consider the risks of those that are remaining, and then go with your best decision. So we'll talk about, I know there would certainly, you would want to know what those criteria and options were. So with the criteria, this isn't exhaustive of the 15 criteria, but here are some of the examples. Obviously, we're used to a certain level of safety in our schools. And what could we do to mimic that as best possible? We needed to be able to meet seat time requirements, as Ms. Skinner just alluded to. We needed to maintain our student enrollment in the great regional programs that we have and try not to impede those at all. We also needed to be able to continue to deliver the special education services that we're mandated to. And you have to have a plan adequate for adequate infrastructure to be handled the increased demand. We aren't lucky enough to have another building that will have 2,000 students in it, just sitting around. And I don't say that flippantly, but that's what you'd be looking at, to just move the kids into another building and go. We don't have that type of thing handled. We, of course, wanted to minimize the impact on families. That was important. We wanted to protect transportation feasibility. I mean, if we have a weakness in our system right now, it's guaranteeing students the ability to get to school and back home on time. I mean, that's our core transportation mission, and it's something that we're already struggling with because the driver shortage that is affecting most all the country. And so any option we picked was going to do something to that transportation system. And so obviously something that didn't exacerbate our existing transportation problems was going to be looked upon more favorably. Also, one of the things we pride ourselves on in this county is our athletics and our extracurricular programs. We put special emphasis over the last few years on getting kids engaged in the school, being connected to the school. So anything we could do to maximize that. There's already going to be some inherent disengagement. So whatever we could do to mitigate that was important. And then finally on the slide, ensuring equitable access to technology, especially to our students who don't have those resources at home. All right. Before I move to the options that we considered, there are a lot of people standing up. I'd ask if people would move to the middles of their sections to allow people to advance and come and sit down, because we are going to be going for a little longer, and we'll just take a minute and let that happen. Okay, all right, thank you for that, and it wasn't the most natural time to do that, but thank you for making room for all our community members. All right, so the next thing, and I know there are a lot of questions about that, is what were the options that you considered? So, first, we had 9 options that we considered, and first I want to talk about the ones that were considered and rejected and the why, okay? And I won't probably have an exhaustive reason for the whys, but maybe the bigger ones. So the first of all, and this kind of tied to the question of the timing, and when we found out on Thursday morning what the extent of this was. Because one of the things on the table at that time was, well, let's do nothing, right? We don't impact any other schools. We're talking about 2 or 3 weeks, we can get the electricity back on, and we do something to lengthen the day, lengthen the year, take spring break, whatever, but it minimizes the impact to the Grafton complex only. But that, of course, this one was dismissed out of hand come Thursday morning. The other one was use non-school sites like big box stores like Kmart or some other, I think there's a college down the road that isn't using it. And we didn't have we didn't have capacity in anything that was furnished or had buildings and classrooms and that type of things were already set up. They just didn't have the capacity to inherit either school. And then the big box situation means all the logistics of creating spaces, and that would require furniture we don't have. So there would be a lead time that would stretch out 2-3 weeks, something like that, which then puts us further behind the making up time window. And then I know a lot of people think that we could just bring portables in, and it harkens back to York High right here, about 15 years ago when we renovated this building. But you have to keep in mind that that was a plan that was in process already. And so we needed the entire summer to get those portables in place, get power to them. And that's an additional issue with portables, is where's the power going to come from? Because yes, we have the transformer there, and it appears to be okay right now, but then you've got the distribution process. So that's something where the lead time could have been, best case scenario, 8 to 10 weeks, which was about what they were saying would be a temporary solution for the electrical board in there. So once again, that was just something that just wasn't going to allow us to get there. One thing we talked about was split days, half days, and 3/4 days. This one was the 3/4 day. That would be too long for our infrastructure, especially transportation, to do a 3/4 day with one school. Okay, and then the 3/4 day with another school. No, I'm sorry, you just said I missed something. Thank you. Sorry, we're doing all right. Okay. Oh, dividing the students between schools. All right, good. So that comes down to a capacity issue. Now there's a number 2 behind it because we looked at 2 different permutations. You just split Grafton Middle in half and send it to 2 other middle schools. Split Grafton High School, send it to the other 2 high schools. We have capacity in those schools, but not enough to handle that. So that was one option. The other one was something like splitting it by grade level and parsing them out. And that even is a lesser capability as far as space in the building, and then also the complexity that would add to transportation is mind-boggling, actually. And so where we already have transportation issues, it would exacerbate them even more than the ones that we ended up considering. And then the last one was alternating weeks. You know, we have our partner schools that we had identified as York High School and Tab Middle, and do we go 1 week on, 1 week off, 1 week on, 1 week off? And there might be some advantages to that, but we felt it wasn't the best thing for learning. Okay, so that leads us to the next slide, which is what were the finalists of the ideas we could do. And so the top 2 were split session with a 4-hour day, not a 3/4 day, but a 4-hour day, and then alternating days with those partner schools. The third option of going virtual, we don't have the capability to do that, and as a standalone, it was a rejected idea, but as an add-on enhancement or hybrid part of the equation, it was kept on the board for pairing with one of the top 2. So we were down to doing a split session with one school in the morning and one school in the afternoon at the same site, or alternating the days. So when we get to the Trigo part, where we are now weighing the options versus the criteria, you are comparing them relative to each other and what gave you the best opportunity against those criteria. So we get to these, and so the best option that we found versus each other was the alternate day. And here's some of the reasons why. They had some reasons, and some of the criteria was a wash, but these were the defining ones. So first, for the students affected, when you're in school, it's the most like a regular day. You go to school, you're with the teachers that you have, and you're going through a regular school day, a full day, having lunch, and things like that. Second, less demand on the host school's infrastructure. When you talk about splitting the days, now you're talking about increased issues with parking, with meeting spaces with teachers, because just because students would be on a half day, that doesn't mean our employees are going to be working half days, and that's all across the system, okay? And so but in the buildings, having meeting spaces for those teachers, teacher workspaces, food service, there's others, but those are some of the biggest. Then we had, where do you have space for additional support for students on site outside the instructional day, extra tutoring, and dealing especially for those students that are at risk when it comes to technology resources at home. Then which option better? This option better supported the specialty programs with our students going to New Horizons, GovSchool, SOA, and etc. And then last one on this slide is the less demand on the already stressed transportation system, which factored into some of the other ones, but this was better than the split session option. This also was better for us to support extracurricular and athletics. It protected athletic practices at more traditional times, which allows non-staff current coaches to work their primary job. We are not in a system, we are not in those days where every coach works for the system and is part of your building. And they have their primary jobs, and by moving to a split session, now you're talking about different practice times. There may be still some variation, but not as dramatic as going with a split session. And now we're starting to lose our coaches that just can't do it. It's not the primary determinant, but it's a contributing factor. And then the last one was maximizing continued support for field trips, extracurricular activities, and athletics across the division. So those were the salient points that differentiated one option over the other. And at that point, now I'm gonna ask Ms. Skinner to come back up.
The next portion of our presentation is going to be about logistics, and I've been asked to speak first because one of the options in the communication that we've sent out to families is the idea of blended learning. And so I want to just talk for just a moment. Some people are familiar with blended learning. Some people may not understand what blended learning is, but it is something that is recognized by our Virginia Department of Education as a viable option for instruction. When you're talking about blended learning, though, you're talking about doing things outside of the school day that require the use of technology. And so there are some some things that we have to think through when we do that. But we are committed in our, as of right now, we've talked quite a bit about the idea of blended learning and trying to incorporate that in to help with some of our plans. And so I wanted to talk with you just for a moment about what we've already done. We are developing a plan for that. As I shared, I've been on the phone with Virginia Department of Education. We've been talking about options for our Grafton schools as well as our York and Tabb schools, because as I shared earlier, the requirements are going to be a little bit different for both schools to meet those requirements, the state requirements. Grafton Complex, we're looking at days, and for our Tabb and York, we're really looking at instructional hours. And so how we go about meeting this is going to look a little bit different, but we are working on a plan, and I do appreciate the support the Virginia Department of Education is giving us. We're also talking about what resources we have. Paula Court is here today. She and her team have already been over at the warehouse this morning. They're looking at what resources we have as far as computers, technology. We have Microsoft coming in on Tuesday to meet with our team to talk about ways that we can maximize Office 365. Our students and teachers all have access to Office 365, and Paula and I and our teams are going to be talking about all the different ways we can use that platform to maximize blended learning when our students are not in school, and to also help us with Saturdays. And so those options, I can't give you a plan right now because our team needs time to work through this, but that is something that we are committed to and trying to maximize for our students and our community. But at the same time, we want to make sure that that instruction is meaningful and that it helps our students achieve their learning goals and the curriculum that we have in our school division. And last but not least, we will be having to work with our students and our teachers because this would be a different platform. We're going to need to do some professional development first with our teachers, help get them on board, what this looks like, how we can do it, because we have teachers doing it right now in our schools. And so we'll be working on some professional development, and then it's also going to be a matter of working with our students and how to do that as well. So I wish I could offer you more information on that right now, but I wanted you to know that there is a plan, and we're working with all of our resources to look at that option to help us in this situation. Okay, so I think the next slide is questions and answers, so I'm going to turn this back.
No, we have more logistics. I think we just got a slide issue. Okay, so just to, we've got some more logistics issues that we just wanted to talk about. And I'm going to ask Mr. Greg Dolak, who's our Associate Director of Facilities and Maintenance, to join me here. And first, I'm going to talk about transportation. I know that's a big question on everybody's mind. And I just want you to let you know that the Transportation Department, once we had a solution, it has now been working to get everything ready. All the routes have been fixed, and including the walkers from the Grafton middle and high school area have been found a route and is scheduled for a bus route. All the adjustments that have to be made. And the only thing that is being worked out as we speak is, because our transportation staff is over there working on it right now, is the special programs, the regional programs like Gov School and SOA. Those are being worked on right now, and you're going to get a call this weekend individually to get that. If you don't get a call by Sunday night, please call first Monday morning to make sure that we didn't miss you. And then some of the special education transportation situations are still being worked out. Now, at the conclusion of all of this, when we're done with all the Q&A and everything, we have transportation staff outside in the lobby. They are going to have lists, so if you need to know individual times and where your bus routes are going to be, those are there. And they're also, routes are going to be posted online tonight, as far as bus stops, all right? And I think that covers it for transportation, but I know we have a lot of questions about things in the building and as far as personal effects and smoke contamination, and that's what I wanted Mr. Dolak to speak to.
I know one of the biggest questions that everyone has is, when can I get my items out of my classroom, or when can I get my items out of my locker? The answer is that's going to vary depending on the side of the building that you're in, the middle school side versus the high school side. And as we talked about earlier, the high school side sustained more smoke damage than, the middle school side sustained more smoke damage than the middle school or high school side. We are developing our protocols right now with an industrial hygienist that will allow us to decide, first of all, what is salvageable and what is not. And we should have our test sampling results back by late Monday. We'll finalize the protocols, and then go about the task of retrieving the items. We are working with the principals, we are working with our restoration company to prioritize some of those items, because not only do we have personal items in there, we also have some items that are essential to the function of the school. And we're going to be working on getting those things out. What we probably will have a situation is where, depending on where your locker was or where your classroom was in the building, will allow you earlier access to your items than it will if you were in an area that was more affected. So in the next coming days, we will be sharing that information through the principals and getting that established and developing a protocol, whether or not that will be picked up at the school location or this alternate location, but we will be sure to share that information with you. I do want to just, right, and we will be including that with information on how to get your items back. I know a lot of you are also wondering about medications that your students have in the schools. The night of the fire, within 2 hours, we had a representative from the State Department of Health. He has walked the building with us, he's looked at the kitchen, he has also looked at the medications that were in the building. Those medications have been retrieved, they are in a safe location now. When we start school on Tuesday, our nursing staff will actually take those medications to your prospective building. So they will be there, they will be with your nurse, and they will be available for your use.
Okay, so so this is going to bring us to our question and answer session. Now, I want to repeat right now, we have several hundred questions that have been asked as a division at this time. And we recognize the importance of answering every single one of those questions. Our goal today is to try to answer the questions that impact the most people and are the most frequently asked. We know some people are going to have questions that are specific to their individual family, to their students' education right now. So we're going to do our best to get through the majority of the questions we can today. What we are not able to get to today, these questions are going to be posted on our website, and we will continue to update that and communicate that out to our families every day as we move through this process, because I think that we're going to come up with new questions in the days ahead, each day that happens. So again, we're trying to prioritize those issues that affect the most people and are the most urgent to address by Tuesday. That's our process right now. We do have staff here, and I know that one of our first questions that we were going to ask and answer is related to our students with special needs, correct? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. This question was submitted. What is the division doing to support our students with special needs?
Good afternoon, I'm Elaine Gould, Director of Student Services with the division. I wanted to ensure all of you understand that students with IEPs as well as 504 plans will continue to receive the services as outlined in their IEPs or 504 plans. If there are individual concerns with the provision of these services, we will handle those on an individual basis with their IEP teams.
If you could also add, we have self-employed programs in
Yes.
school. You can mention how you contact them.
So last night we contacted all programs. Grafton Middle School has one special program for students with disabilities who require additional support. Grafton High School also has special programs in their building. Last night we contacted those families to let them know that they would be receiving 5 days at an alternate location. So those students will attend Monday through Friday in an alternate location. The communication support program will be housed at Yorktown Elementary School, and the multiple disabilities programs will be housed at Yorktown Middle School.
All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask Dr. Wright to share with us the topic we're going to address right now and the questions that you will be sharing so that I can have the right person here to answer those questions at the podium.
So Catherine, I do have a variety, so I don't think they're all totally categorized. But the first question is about SOL testing. Will that schedule be affected?
So we are working with the Virginia Department of Education to look at what our options are for standards of learning assessments. When we're able to really firm up with them what that calendar will look like, because the timeline, we give SOL assessments in March, but we also give that in May. And those could look very different. So it's our full intention that our standards of learning assessments will be given. We will give lots of notice to our parents about how that schedule will look. We have a variety of other assessments that will take place between now and then. We're going to work with our accountability coordinator, Lisa Beasley, and the Department of Ed to develop a plan for that.
I do have another instruction question.
Yes.
Will the homework load be drastically heavier for those students?
We certainly don't want to overload our students with homework. We would expect that our homework would look considerably the same as it has before. What may look a little bit different is our blended learning options for students. Knowing that our students will be off every other day, if we are able to work with the Department of Education to really get a robust blended learning program in place, some of the expectations between those school days may look a little bit different, but the good news for that is we can count some of that as instructional time. So that will help us in this process, and that's what we're really exploring right now, is how can we use blended learning to help us through this process of instructional hours and days.
I have a few questions which are operational in nature. What happens when all the other schools in the division have an early release day? What happens to the 4 that are affected by this change?
After consulting with the group here, yes, those days are going to be full days for those students.
I'll elaborate on that. What we have done, what was communicated out, I believe, was sent by email and is now posted on our division website, is a calendar that will get you through that target date of May 22nd. And I want to be clear, that's the May 22nd target date to end the modified schedule. So that after that date, it is our intent and our goal to return to normal operations for all 4 schools on May 22nd. So when you look at that calendar, each calendar will have your full day schedule for that day. It's very important that you follow that calendar if you are in one of the 4 schools that has been impacted by this decision. It has your day to start time, it has your end time. And again, if it was previously an early release or a late arrival day for the division, your calendar tells you what your hours are for that day. If you need those printed and available, please use the Ask YCSD and we will make those available to you in print format. We'll probably have those available at the buildings on the first day that we return to school, Monday and Tuesday. Thank you.
And my second question is also operational. It says, will the extended days for the affected schools affect the non-affected middle and elementary schools? For example, with York High School having an extended day, will it affect dismissal for York Middle School and York Elementary School?
No, that should not. There might be some delay or advance in bus schedules a minute or 2 because we are slightly adjusting the school day, but we don't see any significant change for other related schools.
I have a calendar consideration question, and I think Dr. Butler, this one might be for you. Was consideration given to the religions that attend services on Saturday mornings?
The Virginia Department of Education currently has a stipulation if there is a religious observance on the day, that is considered an excused absence, and of course we work with those students and families with their educational needs.
I think one thing I'd also like to share is we understand that there's been, our families have a lot of Saturday obligations and our students have a lot of obligations as well. One of the things I've shared earlier is through blended learning, we're looking at all options that can provide to us. There are things in blended learning through Office 365. There's recording options for us. There's live classroom options for us. There are whiteboard options for us. There's lots of things that we are still going to explore this week and try to decide, can we use some of those things to help support when our students are unable to be there, because we don't want them to lose instructional time. That's really, really important to us. Our students need to continue down the path that they're on and towards success. I know some of our parents are concerned, will they not be prepared for next year? We will do everything. Our teachers work very hard to ensure that our students do not lose instructional time. That is very, very important to us. And so more information to come in regards to the blended learning piece.
This question is more for community support. It asks, has the division reached out to community partners to open safe places for students to get their work done on the days when schools are not open to their children?
Well, luckily, we haven't had to reach out because of the expressions of support that we've had from faith-based organizations and local business. What has not happened yet is settling in on where those things are going to happen. And we're working on that right now, identifying. We have a temporary space right now where the Grafton faculties have been working, and I'm sure we're going to look to continue that partnership. But those things will be expanded as the logistics get worked out. But once again, we thank the community for their support because that only enhances the quality of instruction we're going to be able to do from here on out.
And before you leave, there's another question reversed from our community partners. They asked, were there any specific types of support that would be most helpful to the school division at this time? This comes from our churches and community organizations.
I think probably the space right now for the faculties in their off day is the first one. Then the second will be as we try to work out the logistics of having places for students to get extra tutoring and that type of thing at that off-site location. And so that's the initial direction right now. There may be some additional ways that we identify where that support would be encouraged, and it would help enhance the instructional program.
And I could add, we have several churches already working on supplies. So we have a number of churches that are rallying together to get notebooks, folders, pens, pencils, other things that kids need for school. So we have a number of groups working on that. So we're hoping the first day the Grafton kids show up over here, we'll have a whole packet of supplies for them, and that goes to the same thing as the Grafton Middle Kids Attack.
Piggyback on this question, which one that I know came in often through our emails and here today, and that is a question that is both some of the communication I've seen online is these suggestions for students to use these times that they're not in the classroom to be out volunteering, supporting other community organizations. So it's a beautiful opportunity for there to be that give and take between it, the community supporting us and us going back to the community to support. Now, in our communication yesterday, one promise we made is that we're going to stick to this commitment and not make any alterations for the first 2 weeks. We are going to make sure we get into a routine. It is very important to so many of our students that we develop that routine for them. So that's going to be important in our buildings. I love the idea, and we all love the idea of all these students who want to come into our building and support the classrooms throughout that. We're going to ask you to please give us that 2 weeks to establish those routines before we add additional volunteers in. If a student is already scheduled to volunteer or an adult is already scheduled to volunteer, please keep to that schedule. But if the school hasn't reached out asking for it, I would say we would ask you to give them 2 weeks to make sure they are into their routine, and then they're going to tell you what they need in terms of volunteers to help support all those additional activities. I hope that answers one of our questions about students during that off days. Thank you.
Dr. Carroll, I think this one is for you. It's pretty robust, it seems, throughout the questioning about sports schedules and practices. How are they going to get there, games, etc., and talking about Saturdays?
Yes, I believe I don't have that quick answer for you, but the athletic directors and coaches are working through the logistics to ensure that all interested students are going to be able to participate. The athletic directors and administrators are working with the Bay Rivers District on any alterations for scheduling of games and competitions. And I think that's what I've got there so far, but basically that's going to be more of a school-based answer as they work through these things.
This question also goes for operations. For parents who decide to do pickup or who decide to pick up their children or drop them off, is there a plan in place at each school site for parent pickup?
It would be how we would do it on any normal day at that site. Okay. And those school sites, I'm sorry, and those school sites are going to communicate that to the new families. How is that going to happen?
We're both sending communications.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. So first of all, I'll speak for the four of us. I've spent a lot of time with these other three ladies these last few days, late nights, and I can't speak enough about how professional and how awesome this team is. I will tell you by 8 o'clock this morning, over half my staff was already in this building to work with Grafton High teachers to get them materials. Our staffs are pulling together. They're willing to do anything and everything to support one another. And I can't say something. So just to answer your question, too much communication is never enough. What I will tell you is from each of us individually, we'll be sending communication to our kids, our families, probably tomorrow, probably Monday, probably Tuesday. And what we're going to do is provide those types of things that are school specific. For example, I know Ms. Cataldo is planning on sending a York High School map by tomorrow so that you can start looking at that. They've got their schedules. I'm gonna send my folks up, okay, this is what your schedule looks like on Monday, and here's where you go. This is what it's gonna look like on Tuesday, and all those specific information. Stuff about parent drop-off, stuff about parking for students. We are all individually working on addressing those questions, and we're gonna reach out individually because it really kind of is individual. What my kids need and what their kids need aren't always the same information. But I promise we're working nonstop to make sure that those questions get answered. We're also each developing frequently asked questions for our kids and our families, and those are gonna be coming up. So don't be afraid to email and ask questions, and we're gonna keep those going. Absolutely.
And then I know for high school and for us transitioning into York, there's a lot of different questions regarding schedules and how we'll get the schedules, but I want to assure you that as of yesterday, we have paired every Grafton teacher in a York classroom, and we have assigned a room. We have paired it in equal classrooms. So one of our science teachers will be in one of their science classrooms. So the resources will be there, and York has been amazing about sharing everything so we can continue that education for your students. What we are working on, and I can't promise yet, but we're actively looking at Aspen, and our goal is to change your students' room numbers to the room numbers at York High School. So as soon as I get that done, you will have a communication for that. So it's a little bit of a process, but that is the steps we'll be taking. So that way your student knows what classroom. As Dr. Butler mentioned, a map will be coming to you. Also, we are going to have an open house Monday here at 6 o'clock. It's going to be very informal. You will come, get a map, walk the building, get comfortable with things. And also, we are looking to do what we did at the beginning of the school year. So in some ways, it's like we're starting a new year a little bit. So in regards to schedules, if they're not in Aspen, they will be posted. And so just like for the first day of school, the 1A class will be posted. Students will go to that to get their schedule. If students do not have a 1A or 1B, they will go to guidance and they'll pick up schedules for that day. We will also be having orientation sessions with our students, just like we did grade level meetings. So during that first week back, we'll be pulling together the 9th graders, the 10th graders, the 11th graders, 12th graders, because I know they have questions about procedures. How do we get lunch? Where do we go if we need to go to the clinic? So we're working all that out so the students feel comfortable and aware of all the things. We're keeping safety as our #1 option. And so as Dr. Butler said, please keep those questions coming. We're trying to think of everything that you're thinking of and anything. I know there's just a lot of situations out there with special programs. We are calling all our students to see who needs transportations on those Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. So we're doing everything we can to continue that instructional program for your student. And so just reach out, and like you said, there'll be some phone calls coming. So please check your emails. Your emails will have attachments on them, and so we will work together. And thank you guys for coming and being supportive during this process. That's definitely not ideal.
And really quick before we turn it over to the middle school guys, Woody and I talk a lot. No, I'm just kidding. One of the things that is really cool about this opportunity for Grafton High, and I know that some of the students have already reached out, and I know the teachers are excited about it, is as most of you know, we opened up a brand new Learning Commons in November. So the really cool thing is now these Grafton, and I'm saying are already, our Grafton students are going to have the opportunity to use the York High Learning Commons and really start to utilize some of the technology and opportunities that will be at Grafton soon. So I think that's a really cool thing for the Grafton High kids as well. We're going to work together as hard as we can. We're going to be here every day, whether the kids are here or not, and so we'll do everything we can to make sure Yorkton is a great new place to be.
In the middle, Tafton. And we've got some younger students, and there might be some nerves involved with coming to a new school. So our teachers are working together so well to bring Grafton to town. So we're going to be doing the same thing. I'm not going to talk as long as they did because you're going to get all kinds of information sent to you.
And you probably got a phone call this morning because we were there this morning at 7 o'clock a.m. Our teachers are already there.
Our parking lot was full.
It's full. We are getting ready for you. So a lot of the information that you'll get, we're keeping in mind that we have middle school students, and you'll get the same information from both schools. We're working together on this.
And we're going to have some of our students who are Community Actions students that will be there on Tuesday to help guide kids to where they need to go so that they've got that level of comfort too.
Yes, so we're very excited. It's a new experience. We're going to be creative, but I miss the kids and I can't wait to see them on Tuesday. Yes.
I think we might have maybe 5, 6 more questions before we open up the mic. And I do know one of the questions that we have heard repeatedly that we have not had a chance to ask yet, so I may be stealing your thunder, Dr. Butler and Dr. Rice, but one of those questions has been about our alternating schedule and how we arrived at the decision that the Saturdays would be the Grafton complex rather than alternating between the 4 schools. Ms. Skinner is going to be here to talk to you more about why we had to make that decision.
So when I shared earlier about the different types of ways we are going to meet our requirements, when we talked to the Virginia Department of Education, we were originally thinking we would ask for a waiver for all 4 of our schools, and that we would, be able to adjust our times. And through our conversations with them, they shared that that was not likely to happen. That the waiver is really set up for schools that are in an emergency situation, which would be our Grafton complex. So at that point in time, we realized that our York and Tab schools really had to meet this requirement through through hours. Our Grafton complex students need to meet it through days. And I shared with you earlier that one special slide that talks about for every 2 days you miss, you can make up 1 day after you've made up the first 5. So long story short, Grafton is short, around 70 days of instruction. But when you really move that into that formula, we narrow it down to about 28 days we've made up. We still have about 10 days left to make up. And that is where the Saturdays came. But I'm really working with the Virginia Department of Education to talk about what can that look like and what are our options for those Saturdays. And so through blended learning, we're working with the state to see if there's some ways that we can incorporate blended learning on the days that students are out of school. And would we be able to use that to count as time, even though it may not be days? So we're working through all of this right now. I think we were with emailing them last night even about this, and so we're still trying to look at what flexibility we have in regards to this. And again, I know it's an inconvenience for all families. I wish I could make it so that it wasn't Saturdays. We're doing our best to really try to work with the Virginia Department of Education to try to come up with a good plan to help take some of that burden off of our families.
Ms. Skinner, if you want to stay up here, this question is for you. So our AP kids are already at a disadvantage to students who start 2 weeks earlier. The question is, now we're at another week behind. How are we preparing our students in AP courses for their exams and preparing them adequately?
I certainly understand this. My daughter's going to be one of those students. I have full confidence in our teachers to prepare our students for our AP course exams. We are reaching out to College Board to talk about what options we have as far as extending the testing window for our students. This is an emergency situation for our school division, and certainly we're asking for their understanding in that to maybe give a little bit more window of time. We will hopefully have an answer for that probably next week.
Ms. Skinner, before you leave, this question goes in line with that one. For students who are in the IB program who may be impacted by the new schedule, what is being done to support those students with their academics?
Well, we will support those students as we would any other students. Dr. Butler and I were speaking this morning about our IB students. This should not impact the IB program, but certainly the rigor of the program and expectations. We're going to look at all avenues that we have to provide quality instruction when students are not in school, looking at our blended learning options, and working with Dr. Valiant to provide a program that will meet those needs.
And Ms. Skinner? Governor School.
Yes.
This parent is concerned about the workload and hours for the student, and then 6 days of school is a lot.
It is. We plan to reach out to the governor's school. Actually, we've had some conversations with them. There are some requirements of that program that are rigorous. And so with any program, our AP courses, our IB courses, we certainly know, and we're very hopeful that those times in between those school days, that we can provide that additional assistance and support and structure. If you can look at any good opportunity, we have teachers that will not be with students on off days. So those teachers are still working, and so they can continue to provide assistance to our students, and that will be our expectation that we do that.
This is a general question. For the parents of sixth graders or special education students or any student who cannot be left at home 2 or 3 days out of the week without supervision, has the county come up with any solutions or options for these families and students?
Speaking as one of the parents who has a sixth grader who will be home on the off days, we are working on options. We do not have anything set in stone at this point, but we are continuing to work with our community resources, the folks that have reached out to us, to try to come up with some sort of opportunity for them. The other part of that, I'll say, as a dad of a sixth grader, it's going to be a great opportunity for my sixth grader to learn responsibility, accountability, and all those other good things that he needs to learn as a 12-year-old. Will we check on him? Because my wife works as well, so I understand, he'll be at home. There'll probably be some mandatory check-ins by mom and dad during the day, at least by phone or FaceTime or Alexa or some other sort of function. But certainly we're working with our community partners related to that. And as soon as we get that information, we'll share that.
I'm not sure who will take this question, but being so close and right after lunch, it's a great question. What are children on free and reduced lunch programs? What are they going to do, and what is the impact on those days off?
All right, thank you. That is a great question. I don't know the specific answer to how it's going to happen, but Sodexo has assured us. Sodexo is our private food service company, and they've told us that they're going to support us 1,000% on this. They're working up a plan for food pickup for 2 meals a day for those on free and reduced lunch. And details will come as soon as they're ready.
This question is an attendance question. For those students who have commitments, either work-related or outside organizations on Saturday, how are they supposed to handle these situations? Should they cancel their non-school commitments, or is the school division willing to work with these families and students?
Aaron, you can answer that?
Yeah, I was just going to throw that back to you.
It's a combination of both. So, Mrs. Skinner had mentioned about using blended learning options, and so I know that she's already gone over that. What we also do is we try to work with families, just like during the regular school year. If there's something that's a prearranged absence or something that fits within the guidelines we have in our handbook, we quite naturally will work with those families and students to try to work with them in those situations.
Dr. I think you answered that, how I would as well. I'll just add to that we are hopeful that through our blending options, we're going to be able to do some recordings. We're hopeful that we're going to be able to do maybe some live. We just need to explore these a little bit more, and then we'll develop a plan. We certainly don't want our students to miss out on their opportunities. We understand that. This is a sacrifice for everyone, and we hope our schools will continue to work with our families during those times where there are things that they just can't avoid and they may need to be out of school. It'll be important that they're able to get that work and get that work made up as well. And so we'll continue to work with our schools in that, making sure that our school counselors are there to help support students who may get behind or may need a little additional assistance.
All right, so we're getting ready to bring you guys to the microphone to ask some remaining questions. And what we're going to try and do with that section is basically put them into those categories. So we'll probably start with like transportation. If you have a transportation question, you could come forward to one of the 2 microphones now. Before we do that, I'm going to bring Mr. Bill Bowen, who's our Chief Financial Officer, forward, because I do know another question we have not asked and answered today is for those hourly with this hybrid schedule, what does that mean to our hourly employees, as well as our salaried employees?
So thank you. I just want to for those employees who are hourly and feel that their pay may be affected, let me just give you this comfort. We're here to honor the commitment of your daily contract. So your pay is not going to be affected at this at all, whether you're in the school working shorter hours. If you happen to work longer hours, we're going to pay you for those additional hours. So I will just tell you also that we just have wonderful partners at the county. As Dr. Shandor mentioned earlier, the county manager has said, tell us what you need, and we'll provide it. So we're going to honor those contracts of those hourly employees. So any other questions about that, I'll be more than happy to answer individually.
All right. So again, if you have a question about transportation, we do have the 2 microphones here in the aisles, so you can just step forward. And again, just try and ask your question quickly, and I'm going to have Dr. Carroll here to answer that question.
Good morning. Unique situation. I have a senior who's a walker, lives next door, but he has his own car, but he only goes to school half a day. Is he going to be able to drive?
Right, he is going to be able to drive. I'm going to ask one of the principals, is there anything other, will there
no parking pass
work, or how?
So this is what we're working with right now. We also have some additional York High School students who currently want parking passes and are on a waiting list because our student lot is full. We are opening up the back range parking lot, which was typically reserved for IT and some other work folks, to students. So Grafton High students will have range of any of the white numbered student spots and any of the spots in the range, which should be enough to accommodate any students who'd like to drive. Additionally, and they do not need, Grafton students at this point do not need to purchase a parking pass. If they'd like to drive to school, they're welcome to do so. We also have an advantage that if we find ourselves, and we'll be off when they're coming, so we'll be out there and help out and all that. If we find a situation where we're running out of parking, just like we do on Friday night football games, we've got a front field that we can park people.
So they're not assigning spaces?
No,
No sign spots.
Now, your kids, you still have your spots. Don't think you're not having your spots.
Great, and actually he stole my question. That was what I was going to ask, but I just wanted to thank you very much. You have been on top of it. You are a model of crisis management, and you have done an exceptional job. Thank you for the communication. We appreciate you.
If I could just respond to that, that wasn't a question, but I'm going to respond to it anyway. We appreciate your comments. Again, we are super blessed, as I said earlier, about the team that we have here in the division to handle crisis and work through those. And hopefully we've shown that through transparency and communication. But really, I want to thank you. I want to thank this whole community because you've been super supportive. We've read a lot of those comments, and we've seen some negative. We've seen people come in and support the positive and those types of things. People handle stress in different fashions. That's just the reality of it. And we are committed to making sure that we do what's best for our kids. And hopefully you've seen that with these 4 ladies who are going to be running the schools. Thank you very much again.
In order to accommodate the school's transportation policy for buses to get to the stop 20 minutes prior to when it's expected to actually be there, my child already has to leave the home at 6:10 in the morning, and that's just to get to Grafton where we live in Brandywine. Is there going to be an expectation for students to have to be out their doors before 6 a.m. to accommodate the new bus schedule?
That'll depend on, I haven't seen the bus schedules. We're going to be under the existing, situation that we are now. One of the things that we were facing was even having to advance those times, and so that's why we're not starting school any earlier than we already are. So, well, I mean, it's 5 minutes. It's not, we didn't move it up. Okay, I'm sorry.
I understand what he's trying to say, but what he means is that's why we did not select an earlier start time than 7 a.m. That is why we selected the 7 a.m. It did not go any earlier than 7 a.m. is what he was just trying to explain.
So if you have any individual questions, you need to contact us and we'll route you to the proper person because apparently it's not me.
So my follow-up then is, will there be a change in the transportation policy so that students don't have to get to their stop 20 minutes early? Because potentially you have students out there at 5 in the morning.
Right, and I hear what you're saying there. The reason you have that policy is because there's variability in any stop. We will make the best effort in the mornings to be there no earlier than the assigned bus time, but I can't really answer that. Okay, that comes down to your individual run.
There's an app for that, sorry, but really, it saves my butt every day, because it's always 10 minutes late, or 15 minutes late, so at least I always know.
Yeah.
So, maybe that would be helpful.
Okay, we have somebody passing along the My Stop information, so I would refer you to that. But as I talked about our transportation system, we've had problems with that program too. So all I can say is it's an individual thing with the route that you're at. I certainly feel your frustration there, and we will try our very best to make sure that they're not there earlier than their normal time. All right, thank you. Yeah.
And if I could add, if you'll stick around, if you'll stay towards the end so we can get your name, your number, and your situation so that we can talk through that further. Thank you.
So before we take our next transportation, the order of moving this forward in our orderly fashion, the next topic we will cover will be instruction. So if you have a question directly related to instruction, following our last couple of transportation there, we'll begin with instruction on this side of the room, and then we'll move to the other side of the room once we finish our transportation questions, okay? Go ahead.
My question is, it's not just transportation. You mentioned insurance in a couple of the emails and on the video and stuff. At what point did you consider, or have you been able to consider, insurance being part of the solution? As far as transportation seems to be a huge issue. I know there's contract companies that are out there that can provide services like that. Was that considered to alleviate some of the problems you're having with transportation in general, but specifically for this situation? And that goes for allowing for these opening up opportunities during the week instead of on the weekend for operations, because the contract opportunities seem to be out there. I'm just wondering at what point you looked at those and if insurance covers any of that.
Right, I'm going to ask Mr. Bowen to come up and help with that as far as the question of what could be answered by insurance. But whether we consider, but whether we considered that, I would say that one of the things that we know about the whole peninsula, the whole state, the whole country, is there's a bus driver shortage. You have to remember that we're in an economy that's below unemployment below 5%, and that's when you get into these situations where you lack drivers, and there's a time element in getting them trained. But as far as private contractors, there are situations where there's car shuttles, but bus organizations to pick up this slack, not the size that we would need. But I'll pass the rest to Mr. Bowen.
And I'll just briefly touch on the insurance situation that we're working through. So this issue is not really, it hasn't given us a blank check to just take care of every problem that's come our way. So what we have to do in order to make sure that it's covered by insurance is to come up with a plan and a reasonable cost to what that plan is going to be. And so there's an approval process that we have to go through. And this is in every situation. That's kind of our process that we're dealing with. So there's not an immediate answer of, well, we need to solve this problem of transportation. We're just going to go ahead and do it, and we think insurance is going to cover it. That's not the way this is working at this time.
My question is academic.
Okay, are we done with transportation?
I have one more.
Okay.
I do have one question because we do have a crossing guard. I'm one of the cab drivers. The lights for the speeding for 25 miles an hour, is that going to be working on Saturday? Because we'd like to protect our crossing guards.
Yes, let me assure you on that. Those crossing lights are under our complete control. Back in the old days, you'd have to go and actually set them on the actual pole. That is now a completely remote process that works by computer. And so when we have variations to the day, we have that capability to change that. And Mr. Dolek, that's going to happen, right?
That is already in the works.
It's already in the works. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We like our crossing guards.
I appreciate having a question I can answer correctly. Is this about the transportation? Okay, great. Now I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Skinner.
Okay, so instructional questions. I may call on my 4 principals for some of these answers, because some of these questions might be school specific. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over here to, I believe this might be one of our students. Okay. Lockers. Are you going to have to, are you a Grafton middle school student? So your question is, will you have to carry your belongings from class to class? Okay. I'm going to let Mrs. Anthony talk a little bit about that.
And so our teachers are in the building and they're coming up with a plan for you because we don't want you to have to carry a lot of things back and forth. Okay? So you're not going to have to carry your textbooks or all your binders. We're going to have everything consolidated for you because we won't have lockers at tab. Okay? We also have some companies that are bringing drawstring bags, so you can carry a drawstring bag, and the students will actually be able to carry book bags. So that's something that some of the 8th graders have been asking for a long time, so they'll be very happy about that. But you won't have to struggle to carry everything from room to room. We're going to keep it small for you, okay? Okay.
And our teachers are making spaces in classrooms so that they don't have to carry binders and big materials. They're going to share all textbooks, calculators, and all those kinds of things as well.
All right. So they asked the high school question. So at York High School, despite all the lockers you see out here, I currently only have 45 in use. High school kids don't like this. They don't use lockers anymore. They really don't. I mean, they just don't. So I got plenty of lockers for Grafton students who would like to request lockers. So that is not going to be an issue at all. We're also working through the gym locker situation, all that stuff. Not to worry, like I said, we have plenty of lockers that are open and available, and we're going to work with Grafton staff on the way we do it here is there's like a QR code, and if kids want their own locker, they scan it, they request it, and we send them where their locker is, and we do it all that way. So we'll probably work something similar. Both our band directors, the band and something, are in the band room right now. They are bringing in portable shelves. They are already setting it up for Grafton High's band and York High's band, all the equipment, all the instruments, everything. So they're already setting that up in place for the kids.
And I know someone mentioned with the band and a lot of your band instruments are still in the building. And so as they mentioned earlier, we're making a priority list for what we need to bring from our schools to our new schools. And so that is on our list, as you know, important student files. So that is something on the list. Our high school side may be able to get them sooner just because we were the furthest from the smoke. So I've talked to Mr. Dolaf about making some of those a priority, so we're working to bring those over.
Okay, my question is about students who might already be struggling to maintain a certain average in different classes as it is.
Yes.
And if they find the schedule makes it even more difficult, I didn't know if maybe seniors, would they have a chance to withdraw and it could be dropped completely from their diploma so it wouldn't show as withdraw? And can undergrads retake the class next year, have it overwritten, and it would only show that new overwritten grade on their diploma, so it wouldn't affect that when they go to apply for colleges? I know you said something about, well, teachers will be off on off days, but, you know, students don't have the cars to get there, so.
Okay, so your question was, can seniors withdraw?
And undergraduate students have their grade rewritten if they take the class over next year, and it only shows their new grade on their diploma or their transcript.
I would not encourage a student to withdraw from school, if that's what you're asking me.
Not from school, from
class. Okay, a class, I apologize. From a class. That probably would not be an option for our students. What I prefer to do is to really work with the students to see where they're struggling and how we can assist them. Our school counselors are actually on site today working, and it's going to be really important for us to keep up with our students to see where they are academically, and for our teachers as well. I feel committed that our teachers are 100% in, and they are going to make sure that their students are doing well. And they'll continue to provide opportunities to get with those students. If we have to arrange special transportation to make sure those students continue to make academic gains, we'll do that. We don't want our students to have to withdraw from a course that they've already invested half of the school year in. Our goal is to really support them, if at all possible, for them to have success in that class.
And what about the undergrads? Would they be able to retake the course the following year if they do poorly and have it rewritten and only that new grade show on their transcript? They do that at certain colleges, so I'm asking, would that opportunity be available here?
They do that sometimes because there's a withdrawal period. I need to,
They don't withdraw, they let you take the same course the following year, and they only put the new grade on your transcript.
So we would want to work with the school counselors in regards to that, because if we do that, some of our students will get behind their academic plan. And so we really want to try to keep them, if we can, moving forward during this temporary time on that academic plan. But certainly if there's a case-by-case situation, we'll work with those students and those parents on that. But our goal is to continue to keep our students moving forward successfully academically. I really don't want to talk about if they need to do that. I want them to be successful. That is my goal and my hope, and it is the hope of all four of these principals sitting here, that we will not have to do that for our students.
Okay, here. My question, there's been a lot of conversation about making the minimum days required and minimum instructional required. What I want to find out is what are we doing to ensure that our children are getting the adequate education they need in that small amount of time, while you're taking away 2 days a week from our children, both schools. That's like 16 hours that they're missing, but we're only increasing the day an hour. So we're actually missing 10 hours of instruction. And although the kids probably think, oh great, I ain't got to go to school those hours, those are some adequate information that they're missing. How are we going to make sure our children are not behind the rest of the world because we're missing so much information?
That's a great question. I have a daughter who's impacted by this as well, and I 100% have those same questions and concerns. As the Chief Academic Officer, our team has been working day and night to start thinking about what are we going to do to make sure our teachers maximize our technology. That's what we do have available to us. How are we going to harness technology to really get creative in how we deliver instruction? We need to make sure our teachers are maximizing what instructional time that they have, and that we're working with our families to make sure that we continue to provide that York County education. I feel confident we can do this. I really do. I think it's going to take some time for us to put together our blended learning plan. I think that the state's going to help support us in that. And my hope is that we get back to the Grafton complex as soon as possible. If we need to adjust instructional time upon return to that to help with this, we can do that. But our teachers, I feel very confident that they can do this and that they will make sure our students their quality of instruction is not compromised in any way.
Thank you so much.
So if I could add one thing, in talking to our principals over the last couple of days, ma'am, we've also talked about providing time, additional time for support for intervention after school. On those off days, we are working again with our partners to try to set up labs in the community that have technology that we can continue to support students and they can continue to support their own learning. But at the end of the day, it's three things. It's the responsibilities on the student, it's on the teacher, and it's on the parent. So all three of us have got to work together to make sure that we get these kids where we need to be.
Okay, my question is about blended learning. I know you had talked a lot about that. As a parent of a student who is going to be attending Saturdays, is that a goal to completely do away with Saturdays? Is there going to be a time where you guys go, okay, you don't come on Saturday anymore, like the blended learning will be like on the days they aren't in school, or what is the goal there for blended learning?
That is the question I'm working on right now. I'm with passion. So one of the conversations that we've had with our state superintendent and his team are, we know the requirements that we have to meet. And so when we're going to school on those 10 Saturdays, we meet through that provision that I shared earlier, we meet the instructional days for Grafton. However, we have opportunities for blended learning where we can videotape teachers can do lessons online. Could that, even though you're not sitting in the classroom, could that count on the days that they're not here as hours, not just hours, but days, because days is what we have to really focus on for Grafton. And so we're working on those questions. I am going to push and I'm going to really advocate for our students and our situation at the state level. Dr. Shandor, I will tell you, he is advocating as well. I don't know what time we were calling the state superintendent the other night, but and he was responding to us. He was on the phone with us. because he understands the situation we're in. So we are going to leverage our technology, we're going to leverage our parents and our community to try to do the best that we can to look at every option possible for that man.
Great, thank you. And I just have one other question. Will the middle school also be doing an open house for the kids?
This morning, we were working on recording a virtual tour of the building. We are considering a Monday open house, but we want it to be something that is organized. And so we just don't know if that'll be in place. We're working around the clock to make that come together, but there will be a link on the school website for the virtual tour so you can see the building. We are also sending home the map with the new room numbers on the map. It'll be in Aspen, so it won't be a surprise. And as Ms. Young said, she'll have students there on Tuesday to walk the new students through the building. So we are working on it, and if I can organize a open house, then I will do that, but we're working really hard to make that happen.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I gotta start with a few prefaces here. My question is kind of broad, so forgive me. After reviewing some facts on greatschools.org, what is it? York has a 15-to-1 student-to-teacher ratio, and TAB has a 14-to-1 student-to-teacher ratio. As far as regional logistics, when it comes to York, everyone south of us comes to us. Grafton south comes to Grafton, and south of TAB goes to TAB. Doesn't it make more sense for the students to go to TAB over York?
I didn't hear the last part of your question, sir.
Why York over TAB?
Why York over TAB?
Yes.
We really wanted to, and I don't know if Dr. Carroll wants to answer this question, but when our groups came together, we looked at all options, and one of the reasons that York was more appealing to us was because of the size of the campus and the opportunities that exist here. Dr. Butler talked about just one, which is the Learning Commons. We really felt like our Grafton High School students would benefit from having access to that. Also, our fields provide, we have Bailey Field here on site, so that provides some athletic opportunities for our students. When we look at parking, parking was another. We also have the Lifelong Learning Center on this campus, and that, many of you aren't familiar with that, but that's a place that houses about 25 computers, I believe. And so we are going to maximize that space to begin professional development with our teachers as soon as possible in regards to opportunities for blended learning. And so by being on this campus to do that, that is very helpful for us. We also felt like trying to split the campuses so that it wasn't just the York, that we were trying to go both ends of our school division for transportation. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Right, just so that when the decision was made to have York as the high school host site, then that dictated, because we wanted to split the zones, that Tab Middle became the middle school site.
Okay.
I am a current School of the Arts student, and I've been going, because I have my own transportation, I have my own car, I was able to go to School of the Arts during the week to make sure I made it to class. And I was wondering if the other schools were going to be on the same A-B schedule, because that's how the SOA scheduling, at least at SOA, works. Because I only go on B days, so I just don't understand, is that still going to continue at other schools? So even if I personally don't have school that day, I still have to go to my SOA class? How would that work?
So Dr. Butler, I'm going to ask the two high school principals to come up, because they've been working on this. Each of those individualized schedules, ROTC, SOA, Gov School.
So, for example, I know at York, anybody who goes to one of those programs, we've called personally today to figure out if people need transportation, if they don't. Our understanding is that on the off days, so it's really easy for SOA if you go every day, right? Because it fits in our schedule, we've got it worked out. Part of the reason this schedule was presented is so that this was the best schedule for you guys to continue with these opportunities, New Horizons, Gov School, all the above. So we're calling individual families to see who needs transportation, who doesn't. So on the off days, let's say if it's a 1B and let's say it's a Wednesday for you, so you wouldn't be in school. Do you go to Grafton?
Yes.
You wouldn't be in school. We'll have transportation to be able to pick you up from your house, take you to SOA, or the normal SOA route. If you usually meet at a spot and then they would take you home, or however it usually works for you, depending on whether you're morning or afternoon, so that you have that transportation there for you. We're also exploring right now, we're in talks with our SOA teachers on the days that you are here, because the times don't match up. Only if you're in every other day, how can they teach with a camera and you guys be here in our learning commons and in private collaboration rooms and be in your class without physically being there? And we have those capabilities to do that as well. So we are called all of those. We're working on that right now. The good news is we're finding very few conflicts. We really are finding a way to work out. We've worked out all the ROTC. We've worked out, I mean, we really have come up with solutions for almost every situation.
And we know with your scenario, you're kind of, case by case with that. And what we're looking at is maybe if there are courses that we can do some virtual courses for you to allow you to keep that consistency. And we're also looking at, is there a way that Grafton High School may be able to support some students so that way you're able to still have those courses. So those are things we're looking at. So I promise that your situation is something we're talking about right now.
Okay,
Thank you for asking.
Actually, that was perfect, because that's my question about SOA. So my daughter goes every day, but it looks like she's gonna miss an entire class here every time.
No, not with the new, did you look at the new bell schedule?
I don't understand all of it.
Okay,
That's why
so
I'm asking.
no is she go in the morning or the afternoon?
She goes in the afternoon.
She should be fine.
She's not gonna miss any class in here, any classes here.
No ma'am, we should be
Okay.
fine. We're working with transportation. There may be a 10-minute early or a 10-minute late somewhere in there, but they're that way now. So it goes now, they leave,
Right, but
early.
usually they get missed here when they have to go to something special. But then my other, and this is just a comment, and I know you're doing a fantastic job. My concern with the blended learning is, she did that at York Middle. It did not work very well at all. And that was a few years ago, so I'm hoping it's better now. But I'm concerned that that's what we're laying all of our hopes on. And it's kind of a wing and a prayer.
So that's one of the reasons we've asked Microsoft to meet with us on Tuesday. We have a lot of technology that we've not employed completely with our teachers, and we want to look at what is all the different options. We've also had the Virginia Department of Education technology staff contacting me, I believe Monday, where they're going to try to help us work through some of their recommendations for this situation as well. I know it's not an ideal situation, and I don't think blended learning is the complete way to go. As Dr. Shandor mentioned earlier, opening up sites, allowing our teachers to have access to our students. We're going to work on all the different ways that we can do that through this temporary situation.
I have another follow-up with the SOA, just to make sure I fully understand it. So my daughter goes every day to SOA as well. So if I understand correctly, she will go to SOA every day, even on the off days. And if we require transportation, you guys are setting it up, correct? That's what you guys explained.
Yes.
Okay. And so on the days when they're here in school, because it's a shorter time, the goal is for her to do it here in York without traveling up to Bruton, but then on her off days she'll travel to Bruton. Is that what you explained?
That's what we're exploring right now, and we're hoping that's gonna work out for us. We're ironing it out right now, working with SOA very closely. It's
Okay,
a priority.
perfect, thank you. And I want to reiterate, I know a lot of folks have said it, I had a lot of questions coming in here. The rigor that you guys put into this, I really appreciate it. It shows that you guys have done the planning. As a York parent, I'm happy to have my schedule, my kids' schedule be adjusted to support the Grafton folks, and we all got to be flexible, and I really appreciate you guys doing it.
I don't know, I was in the transportation meeting, so I wasn't sure if this was answered or not, but we are doing academics. My child is currently in the Extend program. Are they still doing the Extend? And when he is at Extend, is it gonna affect his other classes and what is he gonna be missing? And I think I did talk a little bit of it, but I didn't know if we had more information.
So your student is a 6th or 7th grader?
Yeah, Ryan's in the 7th grade.
Ryan's gonna have Extend on Mondays. We'll
Okay,
get it
so
all
it's
set.
on Mondays. Now what about like his classes he's gonna be missing now, going from 4 to 8 classes?
Well, I'm gonna have to look at the specific schedule, because I don't remember what time 7th graders were.
Okay.
But they're gonna miss just a block like they have.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you. Same for Grafton.
So I guess I'll bring up the middle school principals would be great probably. So my question really is, I have a child with a 504 plan. I have a child that goes to math class every day and English class every day for an hour and a half every day.
We're looking at switching their schedules to a 7 or 8 slot block, just depending. So you're cutting my child's math instruction time with a teacher by 70%. I worked out those numbers myself today. That is very concerning to me, as my child already has a hard time keeping up with those standards you already have. She is a very hardworking student and has overcome several learning disabilities without having to have an IEP in place. But at this point, what support, and I'm sorry, blended learning, I'm kind of with them over there, there's only so much my kid's gonna get just because of the way she learns off of this. I work full time. I have 2 special needs kids in a York County public school, and I also have 2 other children. So the blended learning, I'm kind of like them. I feel like it's a wing and a prayer, and kind of like you're leaving parents with, well, that's what you're getting, you know, ooh, it's gonna be hopeful. I'm not trying to be negative. I really appreciate the work you're putting in. I think you guys have had a fantastic response time. You guys obviously care. Tab has been very welcoming. So we really appreciate it. And I understand some of it's just we're gonna have to wait and see, but 70% of instruction time to be missed is a lot.
Yes, and I understand your concerns, but I want you to know that instruction of all of our students is a priority.
Sure.
And so we're still going to have the activity buses that will run after school. And so my teachers have already talked about staying after school and having remediation days. So if you want to do like a homework club, or the special education teachers will be after school to offer those plans. We still have our academic labs in place, and our remediation opportunities during the school day are also in place. And we can get individual schedules and work with issues for individual families as well. But we are committed to instruction, and all of our teachers are working on the plan to make sure that we're not leaving any student behind. We are considering all of our students and all of their needs at all times.
Yeah, I believe that, but I'm just, you know, 70% is a huge chunk of time. And so it's just my main concern, but let me know what you need. I'll be happy to fill in where I can.
Yes, thank you. We're going to take care of all students individually.
What is the timeline for figuring out blended learning, and if it will be able to replace Saturdays? Because I know a lot of us have extracurricular activities that take place every Saturday that we have to attend, and I'm just not sure about any.
Can you come closer to
Yeah, I
the
didn't
mic?
quite understand. I heard the timeline of blended learning. What is the timeline for like figuring out Saturdays and blended learning? Because I know I and a lot of other students have extracurriculars and mandatory things that we have to attend on Saturday. And so when I talked about blended learning earlier, remember this is something that we're working with the state to look at our options to minimize the impact. At this time, I can't tell you that it would take away Saturdays. I can't say that. What I can say is that we're going to maximize it to provide learning during the days that students are not in school, to help support our students, just as a parent asked a few minutes ago, what can we do to help our students who really may need additional support? We're going to look at using it in that capacity, and I do think this is going to be something that's we're going to develop as we go. I hope, within the next 2 weeks, and that's one of the reasons we said we're committed to schedule for 2 weeks. It's going to take us a little time to put some of those ideas together, and so I think my plan is more information will come, but I do have to get my team around this idea and what we can do to maximize that and talk to Virginia Department of Education more about that.
My question is, my kids are taking advanced class, AP class. Their AP exam usually is early, like the second week of May. With instructional time cutting, like the other parents say, 70%. They won't be able to have enough time to cover all the material, which will be covered during the AP exam. Not just losing instructional time, they might not be able to cover the whole concept, which will be on the AP exam. We already, as parents, pay for the AP exam. Those are college classes for high school kids to taking it. And I understand blended learning, but my children also very frustrated. Then if they're taking all the advanced class, they're going to jam all this in one day. Then it's very hard for them to absorb and learning all this. Then on top of it, the AP exam is going to be way before they cover every single concept. That's my biggest concern.
Right. That's something we've discussed in our group as well. The AP exam, the date is set by College Board, and so one of the things that we are going to request from College Board, and it may not happen, is we're going to ask to see if there is an extension to that window. One of the things that we also do is, because our school starts after Memorial Day,
Labor Day. Thank you, Labor Day. The test is set at a certain day. School divisions that start before Labor Day have more time to get the content in. And so that's one of the reasons we do summer assignments with our AP students, so they can get some of that content. We're going to look at probably doing something similar to that with our AP courses. So there may be some times that on those off days they're doing some instruction, but their teachers, through some of our technology, could be available to those students to work through that on those off-site days. Those are things that we're trying to explore right now to help ensure that we keep the rigor of that class where it needs to be, but provide the support that your child might need during that time. Again, I shared with you, we're going to request to see if there is any flexibility with that date for the test. And I also know that this is the first year that the AP has asked for parents to pay ahead. And so there is that piece as well. And I understand it because I'm one of those parents. I'm an AP parent. And so we'll have to look at what options the College Board provides if a parent says, I don't want to take that test anymore. What are our options for our students and our parents?
And I think the AP exam is also for us, York, is falling to the day we're not going to school.
So we're working on a testing schedule now, and so that will be adjusted. We may look at transportation on those days. We may look at...
We're actually looking at alternate sites too, so that we can test even Grafton and York together at an alternate site, so we don't have to worry about pulling kids out of here and all that.
Other school divisions do that, and so we're looking at some similar opportunities.
Okay. So my comment is more about people my age, like juniors and seniors. So in my 8th grade year at Grafton, we tried doing something along the lines of blended learning to cushion time that we were losing from snow days. And even in 8th grade, that tremendously increased my workload. And now I'm a senior with a job in 3 AP classes. And I'm worried that doing the blended learning is just going to take away my time from everything and make nothing possible except for school.
One of the things that may be a little bit different this time than last time is that we do have those days where you're not in school. And so typically you would have been in school during those times. And so we're hoping that that learning, those informational sessions, those types of things can happen during the times that you would normally be in school. That's what we're really trying to do, not to give you more to do in the evenings, but to really maximize what time you may not be in a brick and mortar building, but how can we maximize learning for you when you may not be at school. You might be in a remote site that we can have you come to meet with your teacher. It might be that your teacher is going live on the internet and you can engage with your teacher that way. It might be we record lessons and we play those lessons and there's an activity or an assignment, or there might be a collaborative activity we can do collaboration through Office 365. So we're trying to look at all the different opportunities that could provide, but not to give you more work, but to maximize that work when you're not in a brick and mortar classroom.
Okay, thank you.
We briefly talked about extend, but my daughter generally goes on Mondays, and we don't have class Mondays. So would that day change?
Grafton's going on Tuesday, Tab is going on Monday.
Okay, and then if she feels that it's too much work for her, can she drop extend?
There's always the option of that, but it would break my heart to see our students give up the things that they love. And so I'd rather our school counselor talk with your child and let's work it out. Let's figure this out for her. Is it she or he? I don't want that to happen. As Chief Academic Officer, I really don't. I don't want our students to lose. My daughter's impacted by this too. I don't want our students to lose those academic opportunities that make our school division great.
Oh, no. Hi. So I'm concerned about, is there still gonna be band? And, how's the schedule gonna look? Is there gonna be, all the classes gonna be in one day?
Yes, you'll have all your classes on one day. So you'll have 1A and then 1B, 2A and then 2B, and it'll go throughout the day. So you'll see all the classes and you'll have your same teachers, okay?
Okay, so...
Can we talk afterwards? Because it's almost over, and I know you, right? Yeah, you're my friend. Okay, so we're going to talk afterwards because it's almost 3 o'clock, okay? I'll find you.
Okay.
Hi. I'd like to build on something I've heard several other parents here talk about.
And I know the Grafton students are horribly affected by this tragedy, I'll call it. And I saw your decision-making criteria up there, how you came about the decision you came to, and I really like some of the things that you came up with here. However, there's a lot of academic burden being laid upon two small populations of students that weren't directly affected but are indirectly affected. That is the students of York High and the middle school students at Tab. Have you thought about mitigating some of the academic risk of failure possible in a large population by doing 6 weeks here of the schedule and then Tab and then maybe the middle school over at Yorktown? You'd be spreading that risk out and lowering it overall. I just feel you've placed a large burden at those students that are indirectly affected. Thank you.
I don't know if Dr. Carroll wants to come up for that at all, or Dr. Shandor, but I will say that one of the reasons we put in that information is that we want to hold to the schedule for 2 weeks. Is that, we do need to reassess. More information will come to us, and we will look at all of our options. I know it's not ideal for these two schools, for their schedule, but I do know, I reflect back on what Dr. Shandor said, and that we're a community and we're coming together, and we're going to try to make the best of this. It's not our intention for it to impact one or two schools specifically. I shared earlier, my daughter, I completely understand, but we're a community and we're coming together.
I would say thank you for the suggestion, and frankly, no, that was not one that we considered. One of the things we worry about in education is regression through the summer, and so when you're talking about 6 weeks off and then 6 weeks on, that would be a complicating factor. But also,
Sir, I think you misunderstand my question absolutely wrong. What I said was that you consider sending the students here for 6 weeks, and the York students would be losing that time, a minimal amount of time, and for the latter 6 weeks, moving the Grafton students to go to Tab under possibly a like schedule, thus decreasing the risk of academic failure here for the York students.
Yeah, I don't think that was one that we talked about formally. There was some informal talk in that area, and we were looking for stability. And because this is a hard thing to ramp up, and now you'd be ramping up twice, but we did not take that as a formal option that we evaluated.
All right, so as you was mentioning with band before.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
As you was mentioning with band before, there's all sorts of performing arts within Grafton and York, between choir, drama, band, the musicals. Will there be proper performance venues, like between various things that will be scheduled over each other?
Hi, Mikey. Thank you for your question. Yes, we have instantly started working on how we can make collaborative efforts to work together, because we know that we are passionate at Grafton about those things, and we want to continue to make them happen. So we're collaborating with the teachers here at York, and we are working out what we can do. So I promise you that is a conversation that has started. Thank you.
I just have a quick question. My grandson goes 2 hours a day, like 3A and 3B switching. And now will he just like come to school like at 10 o'clock and then leave at 11:55? Is that how that works, like on the 3 days that he's here? Okay, just want to make sure. Thank you.
Hi, I'm scheduled to take the SAT at Grafton High School on March 14th. Is there going to be a new location for that?
Yes.
So we talked with, we spoke with the principal, Ms. Dockery, who was in charge of that this morning. I don't think they had a location quite yet, but they were working on one.
Correct. In fact, if I can address other activities that are already scheduled for weekend dates, evening dates at Grafton Complex, we are working closely with our operations team to look at every one of those activities that is already scheduled and finding room and finding alternate dates, working with all of our systems. It might mean that a Grafton performance is held at Tab High. We're going to be very creative in making sure we still hold those activities and events that are on the schedule as best as we can.
So my question is not really instructional, it's more attendance.
Under the mandate, you said that we have minimum hours that we're trying to get for the schooling and also minimum days. So for those who have attendance issues, like I have a funeral next week, already purchased the tickets, family in Texas, we're missing 2 full days, and then when we come back, we have another obligation on a Saturday, which puts my middle schooler 3 days missed, already on top of all last week missed. So with that minimum mandate that you already have for the hours and the days, where does that put us as students and parents? The mandate from the state is on the school division for those minimum hours and days. Students have an attendance contract, an attendance responsibility as well, and I can ask Dr. Carroll to talk about that. But we certainly want you to. We understand your commitments and of course your family. Things that you need to take care of. And so what I'd like you to do is to work with your school. Contact the school. Let's see what we can do to get work ahead of time for your child, and let's make sure that that work is quality work. And then also, let's get your child in contact with the school counselors, so if they have questions, they can call, the teachers can call your child back, we can make this work. Okay? Okay, just last that. My kids go every other week to DC because we have a custodial thing with my divorce.
Yes,
so, okay.
We'll work through that. Yes, we will.
Okay, I keep hearing everything about this blended learning, which didn't work very well for my daughter, as well as opportunities to take advantage of things on her off days. Right now she's taking 3 AP classes, not mentioning going to SOA, which puts her going to school 6 days a week. How much are you expecting her to, and all the other SOA students, to put in outside of those times? I mean, she's basically going to school 7 days a week until the end of the school year.
I think that is something that each of our schools are going to have to work through. So what you're saying is because your child will be going to SOA for the 5 school days, Monday through Friday, and then Saturdays, your concern is about that amount of time.
Yeah, and she's not going to have really an opportunity to do the blended learning because she's going to be in SOA, and she's already tried it. It did not work for her.
That's a valid question, sir, and I will say that I'm going to need to refer to my school principals about setting it up, and I'd like to find out from you if I could and have you connect. Are you a York High or a Grafton High parent?
Grafton.
Grafton, okay. To talk with you specifically about your child's schedule and your needs, and I think some of this is going to have to be individualized. We have students that their schedules are, they're all very different. And so what I will say, by the fact that our counselors are here this morning working, they've been working day and night, I know that they will find a reasonable solution for you and for your child. In regards to blended learning at the middle school level, one of the things that Mrs. Fort and I have talked about is there's a lot more available to us now through our current technologies. I do believe that Microsoft's going to be able to help us, and I do believe Virginia Department of Education and the program they have, they run a lot of virtual programs themselves at the state level. We're really counting on them to help partner with us so we can develop something that we feel would be good for our students.
Okay, I'm sorry, we're going to take one more question. We have to stop at 3 o'clock, have a hard stop at 3 o'clock so that we can pack all of our stuff. This team needs to eat still before the 4 o'clock session. They haven't had lunch yet. So we're going to answer one more question. But those of you who are in line, or if you have additional questions, I'm going to ask you.
They can come to the side. Actually, we have 2 ideas for this right now. One is, again, if you're here, we have some staff who are going to be available to answer some follow-up questions if we did not adequately address it when you were at the podium. Secondly, when we get to Tab High School, we're not going to Facebook Live the entire thing again, but what we will do is when we get to that parent section, we're going to take these questions we have not answered right here. We're going to start with those as our parent questions, and we will be broadcasting all of our parent questions again in our next session. So the questions we've already asked and answered here tonight, this afternoon, they're live now, and then when we get to our next parent question session, we'll open that up live again. Again, if you need us, we are going to be here right afterwards, but Dr. Chandler's going to wrap this up with one last question.
Good. I'm not sure whose turn it was. I apologize.
Just a quick question. I know that you mentioned before, I think one of you had a child that's in 6th grade and leaving them home alone. If we're not as comfortable doing that 3 days a week, have you all considered utilizing maybe the Champions program and maybe at a discounted rate for the parents?
That was my question as well, because I have a financial hardship if my company only allows 2 days off to cover the 3 days that my child will be home.
So I have to take leave. It'll go into financial burden for me if that's not figured out.
Can we get your name and number so we can reach out to her?
Yes, if you'll leave your name and number, if you'll bring that up in the next few minutes. We're working with Champions right now. We're trying to, again, part of this is logistics of trying to find out where, when, how, and how we're going to cover that. So again, I understand that having a sixth grade parent is a challenge.
Not to rush your, I guess, working with them, but do you have maybe an expected time frame where?
Yeah, and I do not, ma'am. I wish I did. I just don't have that information with me. Again, if there's any other, thank you for the question. And ma'am, who's behind, if you want to come up. Ma'am, you can come forward as well. Let me end on this. Thank you so much. We appreciate you coming and sharing your thoughts and concerns with us today. Thanks.